success, wealth, recognition. Gary Cooper had it all, lost it all, then turned a revolutionary discovery into the success paradox. Here's Gary.
I'm back with Noah Asher. We've been talking about his book, Chaos, Overcoming the Overwhelming, which draws from his own experiences with incarceration, addiction, and profound loss. But despite facing the darkest depths of chaos, Noah found the path to overcoming it by discovering his true purpose. All right, Noah, so now let's talk about Taylor Swift and the Grinch. You write about them in your book, and it might sound like a random pair, but can you talk about those two and what it has to do with chaos?
I was actually interviewed by this Music Observer magazine, and I was so honored because I love music, but I was honored that they wanted to even talk to me. But when I read the interview, I loved it because they were like, this dude goes from talking about James Taylor to Taylor Swift very quickly. And so it's a lot of fun, but that's the humor part of the book, is just saying that I think when we can laugh about our situation, a lot of times we own it instead of it owning us. And that's very crucial for me personally. As a coping mechanism for me is to laugh rather than cry. But with that, I have a chapter called Haters Gonna Hate. And I say in the book, we have to do what the wise philosopher Taylor Swift tells us to do, and that's to shake it off. And in that chapter, though, about Haters Gonna Hate, we look at the Grinch. And the Grinch, to me, is such a cool movie to watch for Christmas, but also for grace. Because what I see with the Grinch is he steals all these gifts, and he's standing on the mountain, and he believes that he's going to watch all of the Who's be so upset that they're going to cry. And instead of crying, they started singing. And that is when the Grinch had his heart change. That alone, I could spend a whole podcast on talking about your actions can affect others, right? Because his heart change became because of what he saw in others. So that already is profound. But then he goes down the mountain with all the gifts, and he says, I'm the Grinch who stole Christmas, and I'm sorry. And he holds out his hands, and he's waiting to get handcuffed. He's waiting. He says, aren't you going to put me in handcuffs, blind me with pepper spray? And the mayor pops up, and he goes, well, you heard him, officer. And then he whispered, I recommend the pepper spray. And the officer goes, yeah, I heard him. He said he was sorry. And in that moment, the Who's invited the Grinch to be a part of the family. They sang together. They dined together at the table, and they welcomed him in. And that, to me, is the beautiful picture of what the church should be doing. And I use the word should, is eating together, dining together, worshiping together, all based around accepting people for having a heart change like the Grinch. But unfortunately, we come across people like the mayors who come into our life that recommend the pepper spray. And unfortunately, especially when you're vulnerable, you're going to come across people who recommend the pepper spray. Whether your chaos is sparked from something you did or something that was done to you, you still find mayors who just, they're the type that get on social media and want to voice their opinion and then voice let me tell you what I heard about the situation versus actually knowing facts. Those are people we're going to come across. And I think the Grinch is just a fun way to present that because it's so profound in so many ways. And, but yeah, I do talk about Taylor Swift in the book. I make references all throughout I talk about Samuel L. Jackson and how can a Christian book talk about the man who uses the F word more than anyone else? Well, I found a way, but no, I say that when we're talking about Easter and how Jesus, we thought he was dead and then he came back to life. I said, Jesus, just when we thought the end credits were rolling and the movie was over, Jesus pops up just like Samuel L. Jackson does at the end of every Avengers movie. And it's just a little funny wit throughout the book.
Well, I mean, when Jesus was having dinner with the prostitutes and Matthew and all those guys and the Pharisees walked by and he's like, you're having dinner with those people? The Pharisees were like, what are you doing with those people? And Jesus is like, why wouldn't I? I mean, aren't these the people that need the help? I mean, so I'm far from perfect. So I need all that I can get. So Samuel L. Jackson's right there with me, I guess.
Yeah, what's funny is I actually feel, and I say this in the book, and I say it very quickly, but I wish I would have lingered on it a little bit longer. But I talk about how if I look back at my time with God, just with knowledge versus now relationship, but putting in the middle of all that, the past, my deep, dark past, and all of the things I've been through, I would say that Jesus would be more willing to sit at a table with me now than he would have 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what people get stuck in is the past, or they're scared about the future. I love that saying that there's only 3 days and only one of them matter. Yesterday's gone. There's nothing we can do to change it. And tomorrow's not here yet. So, there's nothing we can do. No praying or anything's got to do anything. We can plan, sure, but how much of today are we going to waste worrying about either one of those 2 days?
Exactly.
So today's the only day we have. So you wrote this book. Tell us how it's laid out. It's laid out in a pretty cool way, right?
Yeah. I put it in 3 different parts. I use the storm and battle metaphors throughout the book, and how, because that's the best way to describe chaos, is category 5 hurricane sometimes coming down upon you. And so the 3 parts of the book is prepare, in the midst, and the aftermath. And that first part of prepare is, hey, we know storms and battles are going to come in some form or another. And it's not to provide some sort of doomsday mentality where it's like, oh, you better hunker down, get in the bunker. But it is to let people know, hey, storms do come. I'd rather you be prepared than caught off guard. And so here are some things you can do. For example, in prepare, we talk about how important it is to find friends, and how important it is. There's a part in scripture where these 4 guys have a friend who's paralyzed, and they know Jesus is close by. And so they carry their friend to Jesus, and they couldn't get close to him. So they decided to climb to the roof, open the roof up, and lower their friend to Jesus. And Jesus doesn't look at the paralyzed man. He looks at the friends, and he says, hey, by your guys' faith, your friend is healed. And I think sometimes we have to understand chaos can be so painful that we feel too paralyzed to move. And we need people around us that are going to be willing to pick us up and carry us to Jesus and lower us to Jesus through prayer, through community. And so, and it may not just always be lowering you to Jesus, but also just lowering you to, sitting by you, bringing you a meal. You want people in your life like that. And so we dissect that throughout prepare. And then in the midst is really the meat of the book, where we talk about, okay, chaos is here. I say that, if you picked up a book called Chaos, you're probably experiencing chaos. And so in the midst is really the meat, where it's, okay, we have pain. How do we find purpose in it all? And before we talked on the podcast, you and I were talking about, I was telling you to check out this book called Lincoln's Melancholy, and all about Abraham Lincoln. And I talk about that a lot in a chapter about Joseph, where it's sometimes so easy to just focus on the pit, but we have to know that the palace is coming. And so kind of the struggles Abraham Lincoln had internally with depression, and how he was still able to accomplish so much. And so we look at that in the midst. And then the third section is called the aftermath. And it's about, okay, once the storm dissipates and the enemy retreats, a lot of times we're left to rebuild. And how do we do that? And so it's sifting through some of the crumble and some of the rubble and go, I don't want that any longer, but I do need this brick. And so it's building back better. build back better. There you go.
Man, I love the way it's laid out with hope, help, humor, and then the 3 different sections for the storm. So you're in the aftermath, right?
I am. And I feel like I'm always rebuilding. In fact, I'm glad you asked that question, because I think a lot of times people think I will wait until I'm fully rebuilt before I try to help others. And you have to understand, you're always rebuilding. You're never fully rebuilt. And so I'm living in my own aftermath right now. And so I loved when I got to write that section of the book, because in that, let's be real, that section of the book went through the most edits, because something would happen and I'm like, oh, we gotta we gotta add that in. And it was, to me, it's one of the coolest parts of the book, is to let people know that rebuilding is possible. There's difficult moments in it, but this is the fun part, where you get to sift through and find what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep, and you get to truly build back in such a better way. And it's so good. I get so excited talking about
I do too. I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm definitely not the man that I want to be, but I'm a hell of a lot better than the man I used to be. And then I think of people like, Warren Buffett is 94 years old, and he's constantly learning. He has evolved into his 90s, and our brains can continually change. And that used to overwhelm me, because I was, like you were talking, I thought, okay, if I just get here, I will be happy. But here always moves. And so I thought I would be out of jeopardy if I got to these places. But then I'm learning that the journey is the exciting part. I'm not Samuel L. Jackson, but I do curse a little too much. But there's always going to be a shitstorm, man. There's always going to be a shitstorm. There's always, my mother's not doing well, but we get to take care of her. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be chaos. It's how we deal with it, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to name that sometimes, just when you think the major thunderstorm of your chaos is over, that doesn't mean you're not going to, in the aftermath, experience, some rain showers. For me, I talk about, there's a chapter I call Lions, Giants, and Bears, where I talk about King David, and he attacked a lion, he attacked a bear, and he, of course, conquered the giant. And
Saul was chasing him for 10 years. I'm reading that right now.
Okay,
Saul just will not leave him alone, and Jonathan keeps coming out to him. He's like, hey, it's going to be okay. And then that lady, I can't remember her name, her husband, he's like, all right, give us some food. We haven't attacked you guys for the last 6 years. And the guy's like, no, I'm not giving you any food. And then the woman sneaks him some food anyway. I mean, he's hiding out in the forest for 10 years. I've never had to hide in a forest for 10 years.
Right. And he experienced so much, but every time, like, for example, when he's going after Goliath, and a lot of people, even if they haven't been in church, it's like the David and Goliath story we've all heard. But walking up to battle with Goliath, he told Saul his resume. He said, I've already conquered
I've killed him
a
all.
lion. I've already conquered a bear. So this giant is nothing. And that's what's sometimes good in the aftermath is, okay, you've already overcome things at this point. And so it's like, now when the showers come, you're prepared, because it's like, okay, well, I've already been through hell and back. And so now when I experience chaos, I know how to overcome, because I'm already, now I've built back a better foundation. I understand that while chaos can be chaotic, it can be painful. We can know that God got me through it the first time. He's going to get me through it again and again and again. When you're talking about the Saul chase after David thing, that's another important part of rebuilding, is a lot of times forgiveness.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That plays a major role, forgiving yourself and forgiving others. And when I think about King David, he's running for, like you said, 10 years, a long time. And in that moment, there's a time where David was hiding in a cave.
Could have killed him twice.
Yeah. And Saul's in there using the bathroom. And they're
And
like,
he cut
kill
off a piece of his shirt.
Yeah. And he's like, kill him. And David's like, no, that's not my place. And I think that ultimately is what we have to understand about forgiveness. We may have an opportunity to attack, whether it's on social media or attack them physically, whatever. But sometimes we have to just understand that's not our place. And just forgive them. And that's easier said than done. I can promise you that. But that is a major part of rebuilding.
Yeah, forgiveness, I've learned, has a lot more to do for me than it does for the other person. And that's when the light switch flicked over. And I can tell you the most powerful story that changed my life. And it's a graphic one. I was in this meeting and I thought I was having a bad day. I used to think if I had a bad day, I had a bad life. You know, I would exaggerate things, right? And I was in this meeting and this woman walked in, and she was a very beautiful woman, had on everything that would show that she had everything together. She was wearing like a cool tennis outfit, Rolex watch, driving a Mercedes. And I was like, not doing so well at the time, 7 years ago. I was like, my life's crap, just real negative, And this lady started sharing that her dad started molesting her at 8 years old. He didn't stop until she was 17 or 18 and she moved out. And then she became, I'm going to use the word promiscuous, but it was a lot more graphic than that. A drug user, an alcoholic, a cutter, she tried to commit suicide like 8 times. And she went on and on. It was one of the most graphic things I'd ever heard in my life. And it all continued until her mid-20s, until she finally went face to face to the man who molested her and forgave him. And I walked out of that meeting. I've never seen that woman before or since. So I know it was a God intervention for me. I've never seen her before or since. And I was resentful of a couple of things. And I left there and they just vanished. They literally just disappeared. And they've never come back, because I'm like, if she can do that, I can do anything. And she said she did it for herself, not for him. She said, I didn't forget. I didn't allow him back in my life, but I had to forgive him for me. And I was like, whoa.
And that's a lot of times chaos stems from something that someone's done to us. And I think forgiveness has to be, the goal is always reconciliation, and not just reconciliation, like you said with that lady. It's not reconciling a friendship or like a family member's like relationship. Sometimes reconciling, just saying, yeah, I forgive you, but I know where the line is. Like, I'm not going to go back across that line.
Yes, you had to have inner peace, right?
Yeah. And in the book, I talk about the game Angry Birds. And if you remember that game, there was a backstory to it, and I never realized it until after the fact. But the whole reason these angry birds are angry is because the pigs stole the birds' eggs. And so now these birds are retaliating.
Yeah.
And they're so upset that the whole premise of the game is you may find a pig with structure, like a house around them. And the idea is to fly into the structure and tear down the whole structure just to get to the pig. And I think a lot of times when we're pushing for retaliation versus reconciliation, a lot of times we're going after the pig, but in the process we're breaking down so many things along the way.
Tearing everything else up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's so much destruction with that. If you plant revenge, if you plant retaliation, destruction is going to sprout up along the way.
That's so good. This one guy, and this is not, I wouldn't characterize this as very Christian, but it did give me some peace. There was, some people, I was the angry bird trying to tear down the pig's house. And this beautiful, gentle African-American man named Big E, he said, boy, you ain't got to pay nobody back. He said, just pull up a chair and sit by the river, and eventually they'll come floating by dead. And I was like, dang. Basically, he was saying people hang themselves. Bad people hang themselves.
Yeah, there's truth in that for sure.
And they do, but I'm trying to think of what else we could be missing. I know what it is. What's after this, man? So you got chaos, you got the book, you got all the podcasts. What's next?
Well, I'm excited to say that I'm finishing up my second book right now. It should come out by next summer. But before even that, this next week, I'm actually in the studio recording and producing the audiobook for Chaos. And it's going to be available for free on 800,000 inmates' tablets around
No
the
way.
country. Yeah. And so we're giving this book to these men and women who are sitting in the midst of their own chaos. We're giving it to them for free. I say all the time, I want to be the brightest of lights for people in their darkest of pits. And I believe this is a great way to do that.
Well, we just started a prison ministry here called the Damascus House. I told you, we have so much in common, man. It's crazy. It is a Christian ministry going in, doing recovery ministry, and hopefully has a halfway house with it when they're leaving. So I'd love to connect with you after that. How can our readers find more information and resources about your books, your themes, everything? We need to route people to you.
Yeah, the best place to go is to thenoahasher.com. On thenoahasher.com, they'll find all the places where they can buy the book, like Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble. But they'll also find my Instagram, as well as under my media page, they'll see some other interviews I've done. And we also are now helping other authors market their books and promote their books. And so there's a place on there that says hire us, and we can talk to you about how to promote your book and get your book into people's hands. I say all the time, I want to help someone build their platform. So all they have to do is stand on that platform and share their message.
Well, I might need to connect with you about Success Paradox.
There you go, Gary.
Dude, this has been amazing. I could talk to you for 2 or 3 hours. What haven't I asked you, or anything that you would like to share with us before we sign off?
I would just say the main goal is to let people know that you will get through this. If you're listening to this and you're in the midst of your chaos, I do want to know you will. I want you to know that you will get through this. I was on vacation one time, and we were on the side of this mountain, and it started to rain so heavily, and this mountain was so dangerous. It was a 1-lane road, but traffic was going both ways. So not a fun place to be, especially when it started to downpour. And it rained so heavily we could not see in front of us, beside us, or behind us. And so all we could do was just stop and wait it out. But the storm did eventually let up. We could see forward again, which meant we could go forward again. And for anyone listening to this who feels as if their life, like the storm is just raining down upon them, I want you to know that the storm will let up. You will be able to see again. You will be able to go forward again. So just hang in there.
Man, that's the message right there. We could have just used that and just skipped the rest of the yeah.
There you go.
Because that literally is the message. Thank you, Noah. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much.
And that wraps up another episode of Success Paradox. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe so you'll get notified when I release new episodes. Also, if you have a moment, I'd love it if you left us a review so that other incredible individuals like yourself can learn about the show. We'll see you next time.
To learn and practice the Success Paradox lifestyle, visit GaryCCooper.com. The Success Paradox is a production of Forbes Books.